Hey guys, it's Tiny Tom Logan back with another video for you, and today I'm going to be doing my thoughts on a modding guide for the Corsair 600T. Now these are all just my thoughts and my opinions. They may not work for everyone, but like I said, it's kind of just like a bit of a disclaimer. It's just kind of my take on maybe some of the things that I would do and advise to do with this case. Now this is the gunmetal grey 600T that I got sent recently. This isn't technically at this point in time on the market. It's not even scheduled for any kind of release at the moment. It was just something that Corsair sent me over to have a look at, make a video with, which I have done another video, you know, just looking at the colour. But it was something that they sent me just to get a bit of feedback from you guys with, which is one of the reasons why it's really good for me to work so closely with a company like that when I can get sent stuff like this for you guys to kind of see way before it gets released. It's also kind of your thoughts and feedback could even be the difference between it getting released or not. They might not be thinking about releasing it and just send it to me and, you know, see what they think. You guys give it a really positive amount of feedback, and then could end up actually being able to swing them thinking, oh, we may actually release this. But anyway, this is going to be about, like I said, a modding guide. There's a few things that I can really talk about. Mainly, to be honest with you, it's about water cooling. There's a couple of little things that you can do with this case that can make it really nice. Well, I'll say really nice. Radiator technology has moved on a lot recently, and originally with some of the stuff that you could have done with the case, the radiators would have let it down a little bit. Now things have moved on that little bit more. You can get a well-cooled rig in here and still be able to have low fans and decent temperatures and all that kind of stuff, whereas previously it would have been very difficult, to the point that one of the reasons why I shied away from doing this in the past is I personally didn't think that the radiators that would have fit, that were available on the market, when you tied everything in, would have been good enough for me. Now I say for me because when I think about water cooling, I really like the fans to be quite slow spinning so that they're quiet, but also I want really good temperatures. If you're talking about putting water cooling in and then having, you know, near on the same kind of temperatures that you would have had on air, I don't really see that there's any point in you spending all that money. Yeah, it might look nice, but you still need to have those temperatures down really low. And for those people out there that have got like a skinny radiator with two sets of fans blowing an absolute hoolie and you're still getting kind of roughly air temperatures, as far as I'm concerned, you've completely missed the point in what water cooling should be about. First and foremost, yes, it should be about aesthetics. It should be very tidy, nice short tight loops, all that kind of stuff. But then you still do want the performance to kind of back it up. But then I always go with aesthetics first. I'm not one of these people that'll go block, radiator, block, radiator, block, radiator, because there's not a lot of point. You're better off just doing, you know, it all tidy, and if that means radiator, 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 and then all your blocks and a big long loop and then back, that's the way you should go with it, because you don't want it to look like spaghetti junction. But making this almost another water cooling guide. But anyway, what we're going to do is we're going to move on now to the 600T. First things first, I need to get the camera moved, but I do need to take the standard fan out of the roof on this, because I just want to show you the 600T installed. The 600T installed. I just want to show you the H100 installed first. Right then, first things first. Seeing as Corsair was so nice to send me this early in the first place, I thought we'd start with the H100. It's obviously a really easy thing to be able to just grab and fit, and there can be some confusion with how the case supports it. So this is just the way I would do it. First of all, I always have the roof fans exhausting. Now, many of you will say that's bringing warm air in from inside the case. It doesn't normally make much of a difference. I flipped the fans around before and it's, you know, made a couple of degrees of difference at best. The reason why I always go with it exhausting is heat will naturally rise anyway. So if you're trying to force the air down inside, it will naturally want to kind of go back out anyway. and work its way back up. So with this way, you're just working with the natural kind of thermal flow of the case. And that's basically why I would always do it. Now you can see that I've mounted the fans on the outside. I'm just going to grab the grille quickly because they do just fit underneath the roof panel, and that's it, they're in there, done. So we have the fans fitted, and if I tilt the case back a little bit, I'm just watching what I'm doing, if we tilt the case back a little bit, you can see that there's a hole here and a hole here for you to be able to put your fan cables through, and this does push them straight through to the back of the case. So that's a nice little feature there. You can keep it tidy. If you want to get super anal about things, you can always zip tie the clips round at the end so that the cables aren't too loose, and you can go through it, you can go with it that way. Now I've removed the 200mm fan that was underneath. Now the 200mm fan is only 20mm thick. Normal case fans are 25mm thick. Now what I'm going to do is just lean the case back against the wall. Hopefully it will stay there. And then what I'm going to do is just come down a little bit and show you the top of the case. Now that's obviously the H100 in there fitted. Now for me personally, for my rule of thumb, this is the way I do things with all of my reviews. I say the top of the motherboard is the cut-off point. If you drop your case fans into the motherboard area, some motherboards will be alright, most motherboards won't work, and it's one of those things, if I say something will fit and one motherboard doesn't, I just get flamed for it. So I kind of go with basically the more general option, and then I leave it open for you to be able to decide what you want to do. Now if I was to put a second fan on, we go a good 10mm into what I would call is the motherboard area. Normally the problem with motherboards is going to be your RAM clips, which is around this area, and you have obviously you have the clips that you have to hold your RAM down in place, and then also any heat sinks that you'll have at the top of the motherboard area on your MOSFETs, not a CPU heatsink. And then secondary from that, depending on how far up your RAM is, if you try and have a fan there, another thing that you can run into a problem is some motherboards will then end up fouling the actual RAM slots that you have on there in the first place. And I do mean the actual RAM sticks. So with this case, as a generalisation, I would say it's only possible to get a single set of fans on this safely. And then for the price of a couple of fans, what you can do when you actually build the rig is then try it in your rig and see if you can get them fitted. If you can't, just send the fans back. Do you know what I mean? Keep them for spare. Not really any great loss. And then also, like I said, you've got the H100 in there, keeps everything nice and clear. One thing I do personally with the H100, this is just my own take on things, is I don't use the fan headers on the H100. What I do is I just plug the H100 in, turn the pump up to max. Then the fans, what I do is I plug them into a Molex, which is the connector on the power supply, and then I then use fan speed reducers to set the fans up exactly as I want it, and I leave them at a static speed. I don't have them dance all over the place. I never use an onboard motherboard fan header in my rigs, and what I do is I set up a balance between load temperatures and then quietness, and then I balance it out so I get reasonable temperatures on air, but then also really good kind of quiet performance as well. And that's the way I do it. Then also you've always got the pump running fast. You don't have to take your case on and off to keep, you know, clicking this up and down to see what's, you know, running fast and slow. And I've never really been a fan of motherboard fan headers anyway, because for me, adding case fan headers all over the place, you just end up with extra cable. And I never really think it looks that tidy. I prefer to have stuff kind of hidden away down the back, out the way. That's just, again, my own personal take and my own, you know, personal bit of advice on that subject. What I'm going to do next is we're going to talk about other radiator options that you can have in the top of this case, but I need to take the H100 out first. So I'm going to turn the I will get my words out. I'm going to turn the camera off and I'll be back in a sec. Right then, peeps, moving on to the second part of the water cooling options for this case. This radiator is one of the radiators that I now think that it is more than possible to be able to work with thinner radiators in this case. Basically, it's a 30mm thick radiator. It's actually an XSPC EX360. Now, yes, I did say 360. That's a 360mm radiator in the roof, but it doesn't natively support that. You are going to need to do some work to get it to fit. But one of the things I want to say is where it's 30mm thick, you can see how close the radiator is to the motherboard mounts. So basically, once we've screwed a motherboard in here, there's no room there at all. If I put the case down and then back, I'm just going to move the camera for you a bit. Hopefully we'll be able to get down low enough. I know we can't. Right, I'll just move. We'll go live. Right, basically you can see that there's next to no room there. Once it's mounted, that's it. Right, so I put it back on. Sorry for that, I don't normally do it by hand anymore. But, right, so we've got a 30mm thick EX360. XSPC do some other 360mm, 30mm radiators, but this one actually performs quite well. Other options on the market at the moment that I've not got to hand at the moment, I'll probably have some here next week. Optical actually do the all copper radiator in a 30mm thick as well. The EX360 and the Optical 30mm all copper are probably the only ones that I would suggest you use. I'll go into the cooling performance about, you know, just a single radiator on that in a minute. But anyway, so we've got that in the roof. Now, like I said, it doesn't support 360. Generally, we should only have a 240mm fan. There is nothing above here. You have to cut the case now. So I just want to move everything around again, and I'll show you what you need to do. So we have the roof of the case. So we've got the two 120mm fans there, and then when we come across, we have that gap. Now what you need to do is basically get your Dremel, and you need to cut. You can pretty much go from here and cut. You need to cut the plastic. The roof panel does come off quite easily. You need to cut the plastic and the metal that's underneath, and you essentially need to cut a line across here, pretty much straight across the front of the case there, and then back again. And when you remove all of the material here, it will expose the 120mm, the rest of the radiator that's underneath. And then what you do is, whereas with the 120mm fan here, it's mounted on top of this the case. With all of this removed, all you then do is just bolt the second fan to the radiator. And if I show you, I know this is going to sit up a little bit too far, but you can see that there is enough room in the roof for all three fans. So you can get it in there. And then once the fan is obviously, because it's on this raised section at the moment, once it's sat down, you can still then refit the roof mesh and everything goes in there fine. So with a few quick cuts, you can actually get a 360mm rad in the roof for this case. Now the EX360, I would personally say it is a little bit better than the RS360, but for a CPU loop you won't have any problems. You have nice low fans on it, everything. When you start to then add a GPU to that loop, that's when you are going to start running into hitting the limits of the radiator itself. If you had a low power GPU on there, say something like a 670 maybe, maybe a 7950, something like that, nothing kind of ridiculously too hot, you won't have any problems. something that you're actually going to be worth putting a water block on. Like a 560 now would be a little bit of a waste of money putting a water block on. But you could get away with it. I would personally go with that RS360. The EX360 is a really, really nice CPU loop. And by that I mean you can have the fans running stupidly low, so that'll be really quiet. But obviously where the radiator is so big, you'll get really, really good temperatures as well. So that would be my advice. My personal advice would be EX360, just go for that as a CPU only loop. If you want to add a GPU in, we then need to start talking about adding another radiator in. And this is now where I need to rejig the camera. And we need to start talking about putting a radiator in the front. So what I'm going to do, oh, I do apologise, kick the tripod. So what I'm going to do quickly is I'm actually going to remove the hard drive cages and the plastic mount that's in the bottom so that we can expose that fan. So this is all clear, and I will be back in a moment. Right then, so moving on to the front of the case, I've removed all the hard drive bays and everything here. Now, you're immediately going to be saying to yourself, I remove all the hard drive bays, I'm not going to have it be anywhere to put my hard drives. Now, your solid state drives can get stuck on the floor or anywhere, they can go down here. You're not going to have a problem with solid state drives. If you've got a mechanical hard drive, you can get adapter bays that you can fit them in the optical bays. That's really, you know what I mean, it's not a problem. Unless you've got loads of mechanical hard drives, then you've really got an issue, and this is going to be, you know, it's really not going to work for you. But if you're like me and you just run a solid state drive or two and then maybe the odd storage drive, then you really won't have a problem. Now this fan in the front is a 200mm fan. Now Phobia do a 200mm radiator, and it's called the Phobia Extreme 200. Now, to be able to fit the this radiator to that, you do need the secondary bracket for this, just so that you can fit it onto this fan. But it is there, it does go, you can do it. Now, the problem with fitting it, if you want to use the standard fan that's in the front or anything that, you know, has got the same kind of mounts, is the fact that when you put the radiator in, because of the end tank, and this is the end tank part, you have to have it the opposite way up. So the barbs are at the bottom. Now with the barbs at the bottom, the problem with that is when you bleed the case, you'll end up with air in it. So you can get away with it by undoing this screw. It's going to be a proper ball ache to try and do it with it all fitted in there. Now, so you can get it in there, it's not a problem. The radiator does come with two sets of these brackets, so if you wanted to use the spare fan from the roof, if you're going to have the 360, you could even stick two fans on it, wouldn't be a problem, and you can just bolt that into the front. If you want to get a little bit more in depth and you want your radiator barbs the opposite way round, what you can do is cut the bottom of the optical bays out, basically, just whiz it all down. I've done this with the Nürburgring. Basically, you can drill the rivets out that are in the front and then just cut the bottom of the optical bay out altogether. You may need to cut, because the radiator is so wide, you may need to cut yourself a little notch at the front as well, but then you'll be able to get your radiator straight up in the front with the barbs pointing upwards, and you'll be able to get that in. But you may not want to use a 200mm radiator. I love the idea of these. I love the fact that they make these quite easy for you to, like I said, you can just bolt it in the front. Many of you will be thinking that you could use one of these in the roof. You can't really, because what you have to do is you have to mount the radiator in the roof, and then because the fan actually sits out past the radiator, the fans don't line up in the roof at all. So one of these in the roof is a no-go. It just doesn't work. So you can get one of those, just bolt it straight in the front. But if you're handy with your Dremel, then the other option that you've got, looking around for my radiator, is what you can do is you could fit a 240mm radiator in the front. Now again, just take the bottom of the drive bay, take the bottom of the optical bay out, you'll be able to get a 240 in the front. The only thing that you'll need to do is you can buy at water cooling resellers water cooling grills, and that's for like when you cut them into your top of your case and stuff. And then what you do is you cut the opening that you'll need in the front of the case, and you bolt the water cooling grill into the front, because you have the 8 screws for the radiator. I'll show you on this. You have the 8 screws for the radiator, and then what they also have is 2 screws at the side at either end for you to be able to bolt the grill in. And then what you do then is you use that to be able to bolt the radiator in. So the grill becomes part of the case, and then you bolt the radiator to the grill. And it does work. It's what I did in the Nürburgring rig. So you could easily get a 240mm, 60mm thick radiator in the front. You can even get an 80mm thick in there if you want. But if you add a 240 in the front, there's plenty enough room for you to be able to get push-pull and a 60mm thick radiator in there. And then when we turn the case sideways, if we've done it that way, I'll just put this up. So say we've got that in there and a couple of sets of fans, so it will come out to roughly the end of the drive bay. That still then leaves us all of this room here if you want to put solid state drives in, or you could have a D5 pump. In fact, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to grab a D5 pump quickly. Right, so I'm back. So you could easily then have like your D5 pump in the floor if you wanted it. You can have it whatever way round, it wouldn't really matter. You can get XSPC do D5 pumps where you have a little reservoir built in as well. So you could easily get that in the floor, and it would also, if you have a look, that's going to be where the bottom of the motherboard is. So this fits lovely underneath the bottom of the motherboard. So even if you had graphics cards going right to the bottom, you would have plenty of room. Really wouldn't be an issue. It would also mean that you could still have roughly enough room to be able to run longer power supplies as well. But one thing I did want to show you is a couple of options for bay reservoirs that I can show you in the front, just so that you can have a look. And then we'll also be able to show you, and I'll spin the case around, I'll be able to show you them both in the front, but also how much that's going to affect what's going on inside the case as well. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to get those out of the box and show you those briefly now. Right then, there are obviously many different types of radiator available. There are obviously very many different types of reservoirs available on the market. You can have tube reservoirs inside, but quite one of the popular ones are the bay reservoirs. Now this is one from Alphacool. It's obviously a double bay res, so I just wanted to show you the way it would kind of look on the front. But also this is one of the ones, it's one of their D5 reservoirs. Now the reason why I wanted to show you it in there is it's not as big and intrusive as you initially may think. I'm not sure how the camera is going to work with the lights on this one. There you go. If I go in, you can see it a lot better. There we go. So you can have either 1 or 2 D5s mounted in this, and it does give you ample room. And what you can also see is it doesn't come out past the actual end of the optical bay, and then your fittings are just here. Now for me, being able to see that in there would then instantly be able to make me think how I was going to do my hosing, and I was going to work out, you know, how everything fitted, and it would make things a lot easier for me. Obviously if you've just got one pump in there, because you can run it with 1 or 2, if you've just got the one pump in there, you're only going to be using one lot of the barbs there, and you'll only have a pump on one side of it. But I do quite like the look of it in the front of the case. I do think that works quite well. It's quite subtle, and then obviously if you were to have that with your water cooling in there as well, you'd be able to see the colour of the coolant that you were running. I think with the way that this particular colour works, it would look really nice with something black or quite dark, maybe an immensely dark blue, something like that. But then again, it's completely down to you. That side of things will be your own kind of design touch. Now what I'm going to do is just remove this quickly. I've put it in the bottom just so I could show you it out the way. But I remove that quickly. I'm going to stick one of the clips back in, because maybe if you end up running, say as I explained to you before, you may need room for a mechanical hard drive. You may not have enough room. Now if you have a dual bay res in the bottom, that will still leave you some room above, and you can run the your mechanical hard drive there, or you can move the bay res up. It wouldn't really matter. I'd probably move the bay res up. But then you're going to be ever so slightly covering up the beginning of the radiator, which would be a problem because the radiator comes to here. So then what I would want to do personally, I'd want to try and leave this free. So then that, for me, with this case, I'd say you can only really use the kind of bottom two really. I'd only go up to the middle two if you're going to end up having a big intrusive radiator coming into the bottom. So it really depends. So just to be clear, if you end up having, if you cut the bottom of the drive bays and put a 240 or you put the 200 in the opposite way up, then you're going to lose this bottom drive bay. You won't be able to use this. So then you'll have to run the reservoir here. If you do that, then obviously you won't be able to run a mechanical. So say for argument's sake you want to run a big radiator, you want a bay reservoir with pumps built in, but you also want to be able to put a mechanical hard drive above. Now that way you can use a single bay reservoir. Now you may be thinking to yourself, how the bloody hell am I going to be able to use that and still have pumps in? Well, Alphacool have actually got their own ceramic pumps that fit in the back here, and they do just go in those slots, and they're tiny. And basically what you can then do, and we'll do it so it actually runs. So we've lost the bottom one, we've got hard drive in that one, so we'll put our bay res in this one, and you can do it that way. Now the reason why I would, you can either run it that way, it doesn't really matter, and have your hard drive above, or if it works out tidier, because of how short this is, you can run it both ways. No, there we go. You can run it both ways. Put it in, and it's actually not covered up any of the radiator at all. It'll make putting barbs on there a bit difficult, but with some 90-degree fittings it'll be fine, to the point where actually I'm going to show you. I'm just going to rejig the camera for you guys. Right, so that is that fitted with the bay reservoir and the radiator above. Now you wouldn't be able to get your barbs coming out straight, that's fair enough, but if they had a 90-degree angle on them, you could get them to go. Now that way is very, very tight. I'm only showing you that so it's a possibility. I would personally run it down the next slot, or even in the bottom if you weren't doing it the other way. But I just wanted to show you it in there. So with that, you could have one or even two of the pumps. I'd use one for a single loop. Definitely run a second pump if you're going to run a GPU water block or a second radiator, or even both. That's everything that you need then, and you can see that you can get it all in. What I'm going to do is I'm just going to remove back again. So we've got that in. Now one thing we do need to remember is we've got that reservoir in there. You may not even want to run a pump all in one. You can still put a D5 or a DDC in the floor. So I think we've pretty much covered most of the water cooling, or all of the water cooling options. Obviously you can still use tube reses inside and all that kind of stuff, but I just wanted to try and give you a look at the way you can do this. So we've covered a 360 in the roof, we've covered how you can put a 200mm in the front and turn it round so you can have the barbs at the top. We've also covered how you can put a 240mm radiator in the front, and we've also covered in quite some depth really when you think about it the options that you've got with the bay reses here. I have to admit, if it was me, I would have my bay reservoir here as single. If I had to have a double, then obviously I would have to go this way, and I'd just have to, you know, go plan my loop really, really carefully if I was going to have this radiator in the top. Really, the double bay reses and the radiator in the top does get quite complicated. So I personally would probably advise you to go with something, either a tube res or like that D5 res that I told you about that you can have in the floor. That would be my own personal thing, because I think this area will get far too complicated if you end up running the radiator turn round or something like that. If you're not going to cut all of this, it won't be a problem because you can just put the bay reservoir on the bottom. Hopefully that's not too complicated and you can actually still follow me. So right, I'll try and be clear. So if you're just going to just plain bolt a 200mm radiator in the front, run your bay reservoir in the very, very bottom, because then that'll make it easier for you to get the loops from the radiator into the res and stuff like that. If you're going to put your radiator turned the opposite way round, or a 240mm in the front, that means you end up cutting the bottoms of the bay, I would probably, just for the sake of easiness, go with, like I said, if I move the camera down a little bit and I'll grab it, you can get these D5s with a reservoir on them as well. XSPC do, like a cube one. I would then go with something like that, bolted in the floor, so that your pump and your reservoir was bolted into the floor instead, because then that'll just make things much easier for you. You can have the output of the radiator going into the front radiator, loop up to the roof, and then have it coming down to your CPU and your graphics cards and stuff. So that's that. Now, if I pan back a little bit more, I need to move the camera yet again, I do apologise. Moving away from water cooling slightly, you may have the original 600T, or you may be deciding that you think that you fancy a change or something like that. The good thing with the 600T is the way it's designed, and all these panels come off. There's only 3 panels really on the case, and basically what you can do is I'll just do it quickly in front of you, because actually let me remove this reservoir because I'm going to move that out of the way. You can just whiz the front of the case off. Really shouldn't have done this on the camera, should I? There we go. Right, so you can whiz the case off and you can take it all off as one piece. So you can take that whole thing off. Now that means that you can, I should have moved the camera back a little bit more, to be honest with you. So that means that you can then, if you wanted to, paint this whole section, and it's pretty much the front half of the case. For those of you worried about the black insert, that also can be removed. There's little clips right the way round the outside, so you can remove that black insert and you can paint the whole front, basically all the grey. It's exactly the same with the roof. There's some clips underneath here, or is it screws? I can't remember. But this roof section also comes off, and then also the back section also comes off as well. I'm just trying to do this real quickly. And there we go. The back section all comes off as well. So you can take the back off, the front off, and the roof all comes off as well. So if you did want to, I'll just tap that up a little bit. And this roof section all comes off as well. So if you did want to paint the case, that is pretty much the way you go about it. As you can see, we've got the fan filter in the bottom. This should just come off. There we go. So there we go. We've pretty much dismantled the whole of the case there, live on the camera. You can see how easy it is. I can't remember how to get the roof off. I can't remember if it's screws or clips. No, it's actually clips as well. So let's try and get my hands on them, because I really can't. I think there might be some screws hidden in there as well. There we go. So I've done it all on camera for you. That's the roof off. It's all clips. And then all you need to do is unscrew these sections where the cables are, and that's your whole roof section removed as well. And just to show you, now I've got it removed, I'll move the camera back in, just so that you can see what's underneath for the radiators in the roof. Remember I was saying to you before, you'd have to remove that material. Well, this is basically it, and you basically just whiz all of this out, literally just cut all of it, don't worry about it, and then you just bolt the fan to the radiator underneath. And that's it, that's all you need to worry about, and it's all there. And I didn't realise that it was quite literally a case of whizzing across there, going across the front of the perforations here, and that's it, that's your job done. The radiator literally is just sat just at the end of that cut. I'll show you. There you go, you can see the radiator just at the end of that cut. So once you've whizzed those out, stuck the fan on, that's it, job's a good one. Now, what I'm going to do now is, because this has ended up being quite an immensely long video, I'm going to go back and we'll do kind of a brief conclusion about the options that you've got available. Okay peeps, so you can see the office is carnage. I've got 600T bits and water cooling bits everywhere. But as I said, because I have obviously looked at the colour version of this case, I wanted to kind of show you some of the options that you've got available with it. I know this has been more about water cooling than anything else, but the case, when I originally reviewed it, I kind of said it wasn't really massively water cooling friendly. But things have moved on. And like I said, you've got 200mm radiators that you can put in the front. Radiators you can, you know, technically put in the roof. I wouldn't really be thinking about putting a 240 in the roof. I would still say, as far as bolt-in water cooling is concerned, it's not the best case out there. But if you're willing to put a bit of a time in, like I've shown you with that 360 rad in the roof, it's actually quite a simple thing to do. Anyone that can use a Dremel could technically just whiz that off. It's only really having to take the case apart, do a few cuts, change the plastic a little bit on the roof, because obviously you've got a bit of plastic that you need to remove as well, and you can put a 360mm radiator in the roof. It will work fine, especially if you get one of the XSPC EX360s or one of the Alphacool all copper 30mm radiators. You'll be perfectly fine. That would be a lovely CPU only loop. XSPC actually do an EX360 with a dual bay reservoir and the XSPC Raystorm block. You could literally get that bish bash bosh in here, lovely jubbly. Generally with the XSPC kits though, I do really like them, but I always end up changing the fittings and the hose that comes with them. I'm not saying you have to, it's just because I'm a bit of a snob when it comes to things like that. Obviously if you want to go down the custom build route and, you know, spec all your own bits, you're not really going to be having a problem anyway. In the front, the 240mm in the front would be the harder route, but it would probably be the easier route as far as I would be concerned. Why, I hear you say? The 200mm radiators are good, but a lot of people get confused. They think, oh, because the radiator is massive, it's going to cool better. Doesn't really work like that. But I would go with the 120mm rads, and by that I mean 120mm fans, and obviously 2 times 120mm fans in the front is a 240. If you went with that, you've got more options for fans. So you can put your Noctua and FF12s, you can use the Corsair fans if you want, you can use the Scythe Gentle Typhoons. You get a lot more options out there available, especially when you start talking LED fans and stuff like that. There's a million more options, and I personally still am favouring the 120mm variant radiators, even over the 140s at the moment, because of that fan support. Obviously the Noctua fans are epic. They're actually still my radiator fans of choice. There's nothing that comes close. But so we've got we've done that, we can do that. We've obviously spoken about you can put D5 in the floor, you can get dual bay reservoirs, put pumps in. There is an infinite amount of options. But all I've tried to do with this video is, because of, you know, I've got quite a bit of kit kicking about, I wanted to show you the options that you add with this. But more than that, also be able to show you stuff maybe in there. I know it's not technically a full-blown build, but it's just, all I'm trying to do is spark a little bit of inspiration and show you that even though this case has been around a little bit, if you spend a little bit of time with it, you can actually make yourself an epic rig. And obviously, if you've got one of the older rigs and you're looking to update it a bit, being able to rip the case apart just like this and spray it is an absolute joy. And especially where it's plastic, all you need to do is get yourself some Scotch-Brite, Scotch-Brite off the case. Obviously you're going to need to put plastic primer on it. Then you can spray it. And don't forget with paint, always buy too much. You can always take a can back. And one of the reasons why I say that is I hate it when someone buys paint, they run out a little bit towards the end and you end up with patchiness. Layer it up, boys. Make it thick, make it nice. Don't mean spray loads on all at once, lots of thin coats, but don't leave it patchy. Do you know what I mean? Go and get yourself another tin of paint and do it properly. You've got to sit beside these things. And obviously with the front, you can still take that plastic ring out of the front, so you've got the ability to be able to almost change the colour of your case but still have it looking a bit standard. Also with the 360 in the roof, you can put a 360 in the roof and you can still have it looking standard. If you do the front of the case properly, you can still do that and have all of the outside of the case looking standard, maybe even just a different colour, but if you do your job properly, it could look like it come from Corsair in the first place. And that really is the way I try to do things. You want things to look neat, tidy, like it's meant to be there. Not with, you know, big loops hanging out all over the place so it's blatant, you've added stuff in there. It's not the done thing, to the point where even more so recently, I've even been moving away from dual loops. So having a CPU loop, maybe with your MOSFETs in or something, and then like a GPU loop. And the reason why I've been moving away from that is just because it adds more into the case, and I've become very, very much about the kind of minimal, kind of understated, really tidy look. It's just me, do you know what I mean? If you want to have two different colour coolants in your loop, you know what I mean, trot on, you know, crack on. It's just for me, like I said, my own personal opinion, which is what I'm trying to put across, is that I've just been going for super, you know, neat back, proper tidy, kind of, yeah, just nice tidy stuff. And it's definitely something that, as long as I can get the time to put into it, something I'm going to be trying to do with my own rig going forward, which you'll be seeing videos very shortly. But anyway, so this is 2 Corsair videos that I've shot today. It's getting late, my voice is going dry. I need to get these videos rendered, and also need to get my flabby ass to the gym. So I'm going to love you and leave you. Please expect some more stuff from me over the weekend, because I've got stuff just there that I want to be showing you. But again, please let me know your thoughts underneath. This is only really, I think, the second one of these modding kind of guide videos that I've done, and I generally don't, you know, as a rule of thumb, I won't be doing them on every case, and I most certainly won't be taking requests for doing them either, because people will ask me to do them on random shitty cases. I just did this to try and give the gunmetal grey case a little bit more of an outing, where Corsair went to such lengths to fly a case over to me just so that I could see a colour. So anyway, this is Tiny Tom Logan with a very dry voice, looking at a lovely bottle of Volvic over there that I need to start supping.